Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about how we use the word professional. And I think, have we ever noticed that we might use the word professional to mean that someone gets paid? You know, they're a professional athlete, or they're pros, they're a professional speaker. But lately I have been thinking that I don't think that is exactly what professional means. And this happens recently that you can get to be invited to an interview or successful for an interview or get invited to a podcast. And I've been guest on podcasts and job interviews and client interviews. And sometimes afterwards, I find myself thinking a little less about the conversation, but more about what it reminded me of, that the experience felt there something felt wrong for me or it felt uncomfortable. And to me, it's less about, say, the talent or the intelligence, either that the broadcaster has or that the interviewer has or even the applicant has, but it becomes more about preparation. What's that saying about prior preparation prevents poor performance? It, to me, professionalism is about showing up, and it's the respect that we show other people when and if we take an opportunity seriously. So, being paid, that's the financial part of professional, but you can be professional just in your behaviour. And I've certainly met and worked and hopefully been a volunteer where we're professional. You arrive prepared and you do your homework and you be thoughtful and respectful of everyone's time and follow through. A few years ago, I was a volunteer at the Avalon Air Show here in Melbourne, in Australia. And that was my first time volunteering there. And wow, there were some people there who've been volunteering for years. And their preparation, their commitment, their knowledge, their respect, the way that they followed through on tasks. And sure, there were a number of people who weren't that at all, but you could see that the professionalism came from the commitment and the belief that what they were doing things well. They were doing them right. They were doing them with commitment. And I don't mean right as in 100% correct, but they were doing them with commitment. So I've also met and worked with people who are being paid and they are not professional at all. So let's not equate professional with the money side of things. Know that it's an attitude that you could adopt no matter what you're going for, whether it's a job or a selection interview or a collaboration or meeting up with friends or colleagues, or simply the way that you attend to and do the things that you do. So professionalism for me is something about being human, and this is the stuff I'd like to talk about some more today, which is really about the attitude that you bring when you are going to do something. And I know that we don't always have the time or energy or effort to be professional in everything, and that's where we have to be discerning about which things are we giving our commitment and energy to and which things aren't we. So professionalism can also come from some curiosity. I don't know if you've been in maybe a job or selection interview, and they will ask you, what do you know about us? And some time ago, it was about to see, had you had a look at their website? Did you know what this organisation was about? Had you checked their social media? Or if you were interviewing an individual, had you checked them out? Did you know what they did? Were you across their most recent work? So the curiosity part says, I'm going to be doing this thing. I don't want to over prepare and create a whole bunch of other work and pressure for me, but there's probably going to be a space or a place where I can do some preparation, some homework, some understanding that demonstrates my curiosity and that I have shown that I am prepared and professional. And it's kind of doing enough research so that you can contribute and that you can participate. And really, it's about respecting the people that you're with. So I love seeing when friends get together and you can see the ones who have been keeping up with maybe on social media, or they are curious about what happened last time we met up. And so they're keeping those threads of conversation and connection going. I think that's professional. That's being considerate. And I know that we can't always get this right, or we can't always get it to happen anyway. Life happens. We've all got lots of things on. So I think it's more about the priority that you give to the activities and the tasks that you're doing and the commitments that you have, and which ones are going to get the commitment and the priority and the attention. And this is not about perfectionism. So it's the standard that we are aiming for to be professional. So I want to explore a bit more about what professionalism actually means. It is an approach. It is your mindset. It's not a paycheck. I think it is in how you look at something. It's how seriously you take something, how seriously you take an opportunity. And it's recognizing that other people who are involved in something here, that their time also has value. I was touring a facility recently, looking at being involved in it and using some of the space for an event. And there were several other people on the tour. And I noticed that the person conducting the tour, they were busy. They had other appointments and they had other things they had to do. But there were several people on the tour who were just going, oh, let me ask you a few more questions. And it, to me, they weren't there professionally, because it was like a big social chit chat. But you could tell the person taking the tour had focus. They wanted to get the tour done. They were being professional. They were respecting our time. And I could see that some people didn't, in return, respect their time. So recognizing people's time has value, but also understanding that if someone's invited you into a conversation or invited you to an audience or a project, that you do owe them your best. And I use that word, the project, because that used to be a show on television here in Australia, and that occasionally they would put a call out for studio audience. And it was a small studio, but you'd have to arrive at a certain time and had to sign a waiver about liability. And then even that thing of arriving on time, because we're all going to then go into the studio together. And I know that sometimes arriving on time is a challenge for people, but this is one of the first parts of this experience of going to that project, the broadcast. And then we had to walk up a bunch of stairs to another area and wait quietly. We had to make sure we were wearing certain clothes without patterns, so that if we did happen to be on television, that the camera wouldn't flare. And of course, there were some people who had arrived late. There were some people who weren't wearing the right clothes for the television. So they hadn't kind of prepared or even looked at the pre-information, the pre-notes. And then during the warm-up for the show, of course, the warm-up comedian comes out and they're warming us up, telling us jokes and making us laugh. And we had to practice applauding and cheering. So they were taking us through different levels of being committed to being an audience member and providing the good sound that live shows or recorded shows have with a live audience. And so I think you can take something like that professional. You can take a professional mindset to that. They're not paying us. It was a free experience, but there were some requirements, and it was a good thing to respect their time and respect their professionalism and respect the production to be, a participant in the program. And so I think you can kind of give your best. So the payment side of things, to me, that's the financial arrangement. But to be professional, this is all about your behavior, and you can choose to be professional in any situation. So it does include things like preparation and doing a bit of homework, checking something out. So I like to make sure I know what, say, someone looks like before I'm meeting them. So if I can find from one of their social media profiles, then I'm able to recognize them. Although recently I was getting ready to meet someone at a venue before we went in for an event. I ran into them there in the car park, not ran into them, but ran into them in the car park, and I called them the wrong name. I called them the name of the person who used to be in the role. And I went, okay, imperfect human. But in terms of preparation, next time I think that's something that I would write down on a little post-it note. Just remember that this this is Amanda. It's not Claire, who used to be in the role. The new person is Amanda. Definitely, I was arriving on time. Know who it is that you're speaking to, listening to what they say, being curious. These are all skills, or clever skills, that I've written about in my book called Clever Skills, and being able to follow through. So an example of the following through at the air show with the volunteers, several of them are working in one of those information booths. People come up, they have questions to ask, and sometimes the information booth doesn't know everything, so they'd have to make a call or email or find something out, talk to somebody else. But I loved how they made a note or kept on their notes app on their phone what they had to do, chasing up information or texting people back with information, and they followed through. To me, that was a professional volunteer who was committed to the work they were doing, but they were also able to admit when they didn't know something. And I loved how there were quite a few people who respected the effort that other people in the team had put in, and none of that was being paid. So it's respecting the paid workers as well as the volunteer workers. So to me, respect and perhaps some of the skills of being sensitive and kind are at the centre. And so professionalism is another way of showing respect, whether it's a potential employer or recruiter or a potential partner or friend or a community group or organisation that you're wanting to be involved with. It's respecting an audience. It's respecting a host or an MC. It's respecting collaborators or the organiser of an event or an activity. So it's respecting the people who have also invested their time. And don't forget, respect yourself, because if you're delivering something and an experience comes to mind of speaking at a funeral, you've got to respect yourself for what a big emotional task that is and the preparation for it, but to also respect the family, the grievers, the congregation that's there. Also respect the host or the moderator or the celebrant. Respect the venue staff. Respect people who've come to visit, people who are working there. And all of that says, I thought enough about this. I thought enough about this event, this experience, these people, to get ready or to do a bit of homework or to do a bit of preparation. And frequently when I'm talking to prospective clients, when I'm working with them in companies, and you have that first meeting with them, they'll usually say, I'm not sure if you know much about us, or not sure if you've read much about us, but I can give you a bit of a history. So research, knowing a bit about what they're talking about matters. That is another part of being professional. You don't have to know everything, but I think you should know enough. You should know maybe how to pronounce the person's name. You should know a bit about the organisation. You should know a bit about the structure of the place, or a little bit about their history. You might want to find out why you've been invited, or find out what's already been communicated or what's already been said. And you also could like to find out what is it that you can contribute that will be useful. And you don't have to guess or wonder that. You can ask. You can say to people, so what would you like to talk about now? Or what would make this a valuable conversation for you? So if you've done some preparation and then you think, oh, I've run out of my preparation now. I've got nothing left. I've explored all of the notes or the tips or the points. Now what will I do? You can always ask the other person or the people that you're meeting with. And this shouldn't be about, oh, I've memorized all of this information, particularly for things like interviews and conversations or meetings, but to simply show this matters to me. This time that we're spending together, this meeting, this interview, this conversation, it matters to me, and it matters enough that I have done some preparation. And I love to think about preparation, because I'm not sure about you. Are you one of these people who prepares a long time in advance? I don't know if there's some sort of time horizon here that, if you're planning to go away for a weekend, are you preparing for that 6 months in advance, or 3 months, or 1 month, or 2 weeks in advance, or 3 days in advance. Some people prepare right up to the time that they might be hopping on a train to go away somewhere, or hopping in a car to drive somewhere. I tend to prepare in little steps. So if I was preparing for a meeting and I wanted to show professionalism, then I would probably do a little bit of preparation very early and build on that preparation over time. But I also think there's some preparation that is not right up to the start time. I think some people prepare during. And I was interviewed once, I remember, where for a podcast, and one of the people there were 2 producers and there was a host, and the producers had done some research, but one of the hosts hadn't done any research, and they were researching on the go, so while we were in the conversation. So to me, that in terms of a time horizon, it's a negative time horizon, because they're now doing their preparation on the fly in the moment. And how can you do that? It's fine, I think, to check a few things or to do a quick let me see how this thing works. But if you've done no preparation and then you're trying to show professionalism and you end up doing your preparation during the call, that does not show professionalism to me. So you do want to know enough about things we talked about before, like who you're talking to, why you've been invited to this thing, what the conversation's about, what you can do, and what's important for this meeting. And to be professional like that, you don't have to be perfect. And I think it's our striving for perfect that can really put us off. And we might think, I'll never be perfect on this, so there's no point me doing any preparation. But I think you can do preparation. Know it won't be perfect, but know that any preparation you do is going to present in more of a kind of polished way, that something does look good. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be scripted. You could have some dot points or some notes, or you could say, let me check my notes. I'll just check my notes, if that's okay. Let me check what I've written down. And years ago, I remember going to job interviews, and we would, a lot of my friends and I, we would have a little leather folio that you would take to your job interviews. And it was probably vinyl, but plastic portfolio. And inside you had a notepad and maybe the job ad and maybe the annual report from the organisation or anything else that you could gather to present a professional and polished approach. And then, of course, have some pre-written questions. And you don't have to memorise those. That would be like a performer on a stage who knows their script. And even then, they're being prompted often through their headset so that they know what the next line is. You can refer to your notes. You can say, just hold on a minute and I'll check what else I wanted to read. So to me, that's being professional. I'll always say to a client or customer, let me check that I've asked all the things I wanted to ask. So it's not about being slick and thinking that you have to fill every moment or have long waffly explanations. And it doesn't have to be corporate. Again, I've seen some people mistake professionalism for being corporate, and they've used that as a way to denigrate someone by going, what are you presenting that for? That's corporate. And I think, what do you mean by that? What's your experience of that? So it doesn't need to be overly formal either. You can let your humour and your humanity show through. And that's called a pratfall, the pratfall effect. It's a really interesting insight to how you can show your humanity and mess things up. And what happens is, even though you're making a little mess up here and there, usually the audience or the people that you're with will perceive you more highly than if you're trying to make everything perfect. And as well as that, being relaxed and being a little bit funny, this shows you, right? It shows your humanity. It shows your personality. It shows the way that you speak. It shows your hand gestures, rather than thinking you have to be robotic, cold, disengaged. not showing any facial expressions. The reverse is to, try and let a little bit more of yourself out. So in this sense, professional goes to the definition of, I've done a bit of pre-work. I'm prepared for this. I've done some work before I got here. And even though we can do that pre-work, of course, the thing, whatever it is, whether it's an interview or a performance or a meeting or a conversation, or it may not go the way we hoped, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't aim to be professional. Sometimes, some days we know we go, I shouldn't have got out of bed. That some days, some things just don't seem to work. Or the day, as one of my girlfriends says, the day went to custard. It just was nuts. So we might feel, we're too tired to do preparation, or we don't have much time. I'll often set an alarm on my phone for a few minutes before any meeting or conversation or interview that I've got. And I know that I've then got a bit of a warning that it doesn't just come upon me and I think, oh, it's 10:30, I've got to get that thing done. But I'll give myself an alarm that goes off at maybe 10:15, and I know I've just got that extra time to get myself into this position if I'm having a conversation with somebody. And to check over my notes, I check the date and the time. Am I here at the right place at the right time? How long is this going for? What's their name? How will I pronounce that? Who else is on the call? And what are the key points that I want to get across? So this kind of preparation, it's not perfect, but it gets me ready. And it means that I'm not then doing something at the last minute. Usually I'm sitting waiting to go onto a call or start a call promptly. A little bit early is not a bad thing also. So all of this came about. I wasn't really thinking about professionalism, but I did come away from an experience that reminded me how much preparation matters, and it doesn't need to be a heap of preparation, but I'm convinced it needs to be some preparation. And to me, this can be the difference between, you don't have to have high intelligence or incredible talent, but if you've done some preparation, a little bit of research, a little bit of reading, a little bit of understanding, listening, looking, learning about something, that is the thing that can come across for you as being more professional. And what it showed me was I was able to appreciate those times when a conversation or a podcast or an interview or an opportunity really goes well, because you've got people who've prepared and are professional, that they've invested some time and some thought beforehand. And you can be both generous with your time and information and interest, but you can also still be yourself. You don't have to be professional and robotic. You can be yourself and still be professional. So I think it applies to the things I've mentioned: meetings, interviews, if you're at a conference, networking, meeting people, first day on the job, if you're meeting other co-workers, job interviews, volunteering, going to workshops or learning opportunities when you meet other people, the other participants or attendees, even family groups, holiday season, holidays, traveling, going and staying somewhere, or being on a tour or a group. Anytime you kind of come into a group situation, it's not a test about how do I remember everybody's name. That's not what it's about. But it's knowing what time you need to be back, what time does the thing start, where do I need to be, how will I get there, where will I park, and not over obsessing about it, but a little bit of professionalism. And know that it is not only in work where we can be professional. I think it's how we can show up for people, no matter where, no matter when. See you next time.